Hi, this is Michael Carlin, president of Henry & Horn Wealth Management with your Manage the Funds podcast. Today we're going to be talking about millennials. Everything about millennials, we have to understand them as a class of people. We have to understand what they're doing economically, financially, because we're trying to figure out ultimately where to put your money where it makes the most sense. And today, we are joined by the talented, sophisticated, accomplished reporter, TV personality, in my opinion, and opinion of thousands. Lindsay Reiser, ASU graduate. I know.
We're going to have an applause sound effect right there, right?
I know. You know, everyone should be listening to your Wiser with Reiser podcast.
They'll get wiser if they do. It's a guarantee.
How do they get that?
It's in the name. Well,
I know
I interview people like you.
Yeah.
I interview people who know a lot more than me about finance, physical wellness, emotional wellness.
Yeah. Where do you get it? How do you get it? How does one get the podcast? How does it happen?
So the same place where somebody would get this Manage the Funds podcast.
Yeah.
If you have an iPhone, there's a podcast app. If you have an Android, I think it's the Google Play. You type in Wiser, and Wiser with Reiser should come up with my picture.
See?
And you'll get wiser.
Exactly. Yes.
I think that's what we all want.
It is. It's certainly what I want. And you definitely downplay your skill set because she's talented. She's reported on finance for years. Anyway, I could go on. Do you want me to go on?
Let's not.
Okay, let's not. Let's go right into it. So you are the millennial expert. You are a millennial. We know, and we're going to classify millennials as people in their early 20s to mid 30s. And if you think about people in their early 20s to mid 30s, they're either starting to really earn and spend, or they're just really starting to kind of peek into the workforce. And there's just such a huge number of these children of baby boomers that are coming in and changing our economy. It's pretty incredible. So anything broad that you want to say about the millennial experience in terms of just who they are broadly?
I should give a disclaimer that I am a very black and white person when it comes to my finances. And we'll get into that a little bit more about my spending habits and that of my friends. But, I don't think it's a one size fits all. I think you get 10 people into a room and you're going to find 10 different spending habits, whether it's millennials or another age group. But I do think that there are some trends that we're seeing, and I can kind of maybe explain why. But I am very anal when it comes to saving money and not spending a whole lot. Like, I have envelopes in my purse right now.
You do?
I do.
Prove it. Don't prove it. I got it. I believe you. Yes, but you have always been focused on finances, money, savings.
I've always been focused, but it wasn't until the last few months that I really kicked it into gear and really put my money where my mouth is. And I actually, I used to just treat my checking account like just one big pot,
right,
and everything would come out of that pot. And now I have sinking funds, quote unquote sinking funds, and I have my envelopes for certain expenses, eating out, grocery, etc. But really, seeing in an Excel spreadsheet, okay, if traveling is so much of a priority, then I need to be putting in as much as I can into travel, etc. And obviously, you hear other podcasts like, oh, you should be saving. Mm-hmm. What is it? I think it's 50% of your income should be, no more than 50% should be on what it costs to live.
Right. I mean, if I could be so bold as to just throw numbers out there, the financial planning numbers, if you're going to save for a long period of time, those that are millennials, 10% of your income is what you'd like to save. If you could save 10% of your total gross income, that's a really good start over a sustained period of time. But not many people do that. But I have seen, so you talk about your own organization, but I've seen with millennial clients where they are great savers and planners, and they're using technology. You talk about Excel spreadsheets, but there's a lot of things out there that I see people using.
You also could be working with a skewed part of the population, though, because your clients are seeking you out in order to get their finances on track.
Right.
So you're dealing with somebody who already has a goal of cleaning up their financial house. But Mint is an app that's huge among me and my friends. I'm just using right now Google Sheets. There's plenty
Really?
of free resources out there, for budgeting documents, but Mint is a big one. There are apps that will round up every purchase that you make and
Is that
throw.
Robinhood? Something like that?
There are
There's
several. I
Oh, wow.
couldn't name just one.
Got it.
And I don't use any of those because I don't have a problem saving. But
Right.
I do use Mint. You can't. It's difficult to use Mint if you are on a cash-based system because Mint is connected to your bank account.
Correct.
And so you can't necessarily say that, oh, this $350 that I took out for the month of February for groceries. Mint doesn't understand that. It just understands that you've taken $350 out of your bank.
So why do you use cash? That's a whole different story. Can we do a whole segment on why you use cash? And
It's new, the last 5 months, but
Wow.
it has made a significant impact on the amount that I spend, and I think it's psychological.
Because you see it leaving your hands.
You see it leaving your hands.
Right.
Every time you make an expenditure, you write in pencil or pen on the envelope how much you have. So you
Wow.
see it steadily decreasing. And you say, this is what I have to spend on X this month. And once it's gone, I can't spend anymore. And so you're much more mindful.
She's a super millennial. Super.
I have goals, baby.
I'm telling you, that's really impressive. And Mint and those kind of things, just for me to take a step back to describe it for those listeners that don't know, Mint and Quicken and our software, when you connect your bank accounts and your credit card accounts to certain types of softwares like those 3 I just mentioned, it will pull in all of your transactions. It'll pull in things that are income and classify it as such. It'll classify expenses, and it'll go as far as to say, well, this Safeway expense or this Albertsons expense or this Fry's, those are all groceries. And if there are things that come in where, if Lindsay, you bought a book and it was specifically for work, you could then recategorize that and say, that's actually your work expense. And the software will let you really begin to understand where your money goes. Money in, money out. And for us, we're huge proponents of that. And not enough people do it. But I'm seeing with millennials, it's just a greater acceptance of and understanding of technology. They're not as afraid of it as certainly my older clients are. Would you say that when it comes to putting in your username and password into things, would you say that generationally maybe you're more trusting? Because my older clients are like, whoa. Before I connect my bank account, let me really... And the millennials are like, oh, no, I got it. Done. Just send me the link. I'll set it up myself. So that's a generational difference?
I don't think it's better or worse either. I mean, there could be arguments made for whether or not that's a good thing, but I would say that's true. I did see that Mint was powered by Experian, I believe, even though I think Experian was recently the subject of a data breach anyway.
And I think owned by Bank of America.
But, you do credit monitoring, and you hope for ironclad passwords and hope for the best. It doesn't keep me up at night, but maybe it should.
No, well, I think so, and we promote that every one of our clients should have some credit monitoring services. I mean, Experian obviously had the breach, so if you choose to trust them, that's great. I want you to do something. Personally, for me, not a blanket recommendation for everybody, but personally for me, I'm a LifeLock user, and it does give me a lot of comfort. There was an instance when I used LifeLock where I then went to I went to Best Buy to buy a bunch of computers, and they said, if you open up a Best Buy credit card, huge savings, huge. And I was like, you know what? Okay, I'm gonna pay it off anyway. I'm not gonna finance it, but let's go ahead and do it. And because I had LifeLock, it was really hard to open up that credit card. I didn't mind at all. So hopefully, you're seeing generationally people are using those credit watch services and paying for it, hopefully. Yeah, you're shaking it. Yeah, you agree. Yes, she totally agrees. So when we think about the millennials, what we're really, again, trying to figure out is that if you're listening to this podcast and you're getting your education, I need to understand where the millennials are going, because maybe that's going to help me decide where I should get educated. Should it be things more in the medical field? Should it be in other kinds of technological services? Where is the population going? If you are figuring out where to invest, to understand millennial habits, particularly because there's so much money that they're really just starting to earn and spend, and there's so many of them. It's going to help in some ways dictate where you should be investing your money. So we need to understand that. And again, long term, where are we going? And I think back to, we had this real estate boom from, let's call it, the early 2000s and ended in 2006, where real estate prices surged high nationally and then obviously crashed. The other significant surge we had in real estate pricing came at a time where the baby boomers were all of the age where it came time for them to buy homes. It also came at a time where mortgage rates were more than 10%. So here you are, you have massively expensive mortgages, yet the hugest cross-section of our U.S. population was at the stage of life where they were buying homes. And it also was something that home ownership became the trend. So you had the population, the trend, and if you were investing in residential real estate at that time and for a long time thereafter, you've read the trend, you understand where the population is, and that's a way to make a lot of money. You know where to participate. If you were getting education, you would see this and you'd say, maybe I should be a real estate agent, maybe I should be a mortgage broker. There's all of that kind of stuff. So that's what we're looking at here. So one of the things I would love to dive in and talk about is residential real estate ownership. There's a lot written about it. And there's just this general feeling. I think the majority of articles are written from the perspective of, I don't think that there are millennials or home buyers. We think that they're all renters. But yet I've seen data that refutes that. So I'm just curious to where your perspective falls into residential real estate home ownership.
I think that we have all become wiser after the crash, and we've seen mistakes that were made, and we don't want to repeat those mistakes. I think having a 20% down is no longer just an option. I think you have to have that, and that takes a long time to build.
You do.
Especially when you're paying high rent costs. Mm-hmm. I have some friends who are living at home because they also have student debt to pay off, and they're like, well, do I pay off my student loans or do I save for a down payment on a house? And right now it's 2019. The housing, at least here in Phoenix, has rebounded, and it's quite expensive, so it doesn't really seem like the right time to get in.
Right.
So everybody's waiting for the next crash, but is that next year? Is that a couple years down the road? How long am I going to have to live with my parents?
Right. How long are my parents going to let me live here? No, that doesn't factor in.
Well, a lot of parents are charging rent too.
Oh,
so
wow.
I'm now living. This isn't me personally, but some people are in the boat where, okay, am I going to pay my parents $400 a month,
right,
but make the sacrifices that you have to make when you're living with your parents, or am I going to pony up an extra $500 and just get a one-bedroom apartment?
Right. So it is interesting. So you are. I think what, if I hear you right, you're saying that, goodness, the 20% down is a huge hurdle, where if you rewind the clock 10, 12 years ago, at that time, you were able to people bought a home with no money down and terrible credit. That's not a good practice. 20% down at least gives everybody a cushion just in case the real estate market gets hurt. But I'm interested in the psychological aspect of it, watching friends and family having gone through the financial crisis and the residential real estate crisis. Do you have any way to kind of sum up what you saw and what you think your friends saw at that time, what they saw the other people going through who were maybe freaking out, losing money?
I think it's overextending yourself and maybe living beyond your means. And so now I think that you're seeing the advent of minimalism and not wanting all of your take-home pay to be going toward rent or a mortgage, and wanting to travel and wanting to go out to eat with your friends on the weekends, wanting to do those things. And so what do you need for that? Well, you need expendable cash. So I think you're learning from people's mistakes, and you're basically saying, well, I'd rather have a much more modest home so I can afford these other things. But even now, as a modest home, you buy a $300,000 home, you still need 20% down is not a small chunk of change, and that takes time, particularly
after tax.
particularly if you are still paying off student loans.
Yeah. And we're definitely gonna hit on student loans. We have to, because it's a huge part of the equation, the millennial equation. But you also brought up experiences, and I want to touch on experiences because, I'm a finance guy. I can't help it. And I don't drink coffee, and people think that I do because I have high energy. Okay, but I get it. So that's neither here nor there. So I don't spend $4 a day on coffee, and if I drank coffee, I like to think that I wouldn't spend $4 a day on coffee because that just goes against my financial principles. But 60% of millennials admit to spending more than $4 a day on coffee. 79% will splurge to eat at the hottest restaurant in town. 69% buy clothes that they don't necessarily need. And I know I'm looking at you, and I'm not accusing you. I'm just saying, but generationally speaking, I'm seeing the data that suggests what you said is right, that there is a feeling that I need to be spending on experiences. I mean, is it really that simple? That they're just this is where they'd rather, as a generation, focus their cash flow?
I would say, in my experience, that has been the case. Aside from the $4 coffee and the clothing, but for me, eating out is a big one. And I would rather take you out to dinner than buy you a birthday gift. I would rather have something that we can both share and experience. And going out to eat isn't cheap unless we're going to a fast casual restaurant. We're going to be spending more money. And so when I did my budget, I kind of was shocked at how much I was spending on eating out, and I've tried to rein that in a little bit, and it still exceeds how much I'm putting toward travel. Really? And when you think about it, is eating out really that much more important to me than travel is? And that's a very black and white way to look at it. But
typical riser way to look at finances.
While I am saving quite a bit of money per month for travel, I have had an honest conversation with myself, and I've said, I don't really want to deny myself these other day-to-day things that I enjoy.
Right.
But that's spending time with my loved ones. It's not like I'm going to Durant's and I'm buying myself a martini and a steak and just staring at the four walls. This is experiences that I'm embarking on with other people. I would rather not buy that new bag so that I can afford to maybe take my family out to dinner.
So I bring that back to, you confirm for me what's happening with restaurants. In that restaurants are, it just in sheer the numbers of new restaurants that have come out, not just here in Phoenix or Tempe or Scottsdale or this greater metro area, but across the country, there has just been a massive influx of restaurants. And some people, what you would ask, well, why? There's two reasons. One, real estate people who own these, whether it be standalone buildings or strip centers where restaurants are located, they charge astronomical rent, which brings in a bunch of income for their real estate property. So real estate people want restaurants, number one, but they can't have them if they can't be supported. And if you understood that millennials are spending on experiences, just as Lindsay had indicated, and why, you could have positioned yourself to own commercial real estate, bring in restaurants, and you would be able to support them, hopefully, if it was a good restaurant, because millennials are there to help move that along. Interesting. And then there's the thing about, cars. And so one way to look at it from an investment standpoint is that the automotive index, again, the baseline performance for how auto stocks performed in 2018 was horrible. It was the second worst performing area of the market. It was down about 30% last year. So I asked the question to myself, do we have millennials to blame for this? Are they just Ubering everywhere and they're not buying cars? Is this really what's happening? So the numbers show that more than half of millennials are using taxis and Ubers, mostly Ubers and the equivalent, but compared to 15% of baby boomers using the same services. So where do you sit on that whole
I've had
spectrum?
that conversation with myself because I live relatively close to work, and I've put in thousands of dollars in repairs to my car. It's a 2010, and I've thought, okay, so I'm paying registration annually, and I'm paying for gas, and I'm now paying for all of these repairs. Is it worth it? And so I've crunched the numbers, and for me, owning a car still provides me the freedom to go see my parents across town if I need to,
Right.
go do X, Y, and Z errand. And so for me, it doesn't make sense to solely Uber. But I will say that I will drive the car that I have into the ground.
Right.
And then when I am ready and able to buy another car, my goal is to do that in cash.
Fantastic.
And so you won't see me in a Corvette. You won't see me in any kind of luxury car. You're going to see me in something that I can afford because it's taking me from point A to point B.
And so and that's your opinion, and it would seem that your opinion also embodies what I read generationally is happening. Less desire to have those flashy cars, because certainly my experience with baby boomers is lots of car leases, which was a kind of a newer financial innovation for when they were really starting to earn money and drive when they were of millennial age. And big cars, big Mercedes, very expensive cars. So are you seeing that generationally, or is it just with you?
There are the outliers. I have friends who have recently bought expensive cars, who can afford that with their income. But once you have an expensive car payment, what are you giving up? And
Right.
so that friend that has that expensive car payment might not be going to Europe like I am in a few months. Mm-hmm. And so, you don't have, you have a finite amount, and you have to decide, well, how much is going to go to that? And why am I going to sink money into a depreciating asset?
You are making my heart sing. It does. That's all of my financial sensibilities. It captures them perfect. And I do think that because there's more information out there, whether it be people are Googling it and they're reading about it, there's more financial astuteness, if that is such a concept. There's more financially aware millennials than there were generations ago. People in their 20s with less of a clue in terms of how does this thing all work. At least the information's out there, and clearly you're reading it, researching it.
And to be clear also, I wish that I knew what I know now 10 years ago. I mean, it's not necessarily that our parents are teaching us all of this stuff. It's taking the resources that are available to us via all of the different mediums, podcasts, books, and just being your own student so that you can set yourself up, and not necessarily being brought up to understand these concepts.
And I would argue that parents of millennials are less able to educate their kids, because I'm looking at their total savings rate and with the money they have saved or they really don't have saved. And that's not the kind of example that I think serves well for the millennial generation. So I'm not sure that the parental group could even do that. I think you can do a better job researching it online. You just got to have the motivation. So which neatly folds us into whether or not millennials really spend it all. That's the debate. Do they spend? We know you don't. You got envelopes. I think I want to see the envelopes, not as soon as we're done. I got to see those. So, but by and large, you are classically your saving mentality, your thoughtfulness about finances also rings true with what I read about the millennial generation on balance. So, despite the liberal way that they spend, which we talked about, Ubering and coffee and dining out, those kinds of things. So if you look at annual spending, they are more than a third of millennials, despite the fact that they're spending kind of what would seem to be frivolously, more than a third of them have a written financial plan. In their parents, it's 18%. Okay? Nearly 3/4, 72%, according to the study. It was a Charles Schwab study. It was really good. But 3/4 of millennials develop their written plans with professional help, which I'm impressed by that. And 91% of them that have plans review them at least annually. I think technology has a lot to do with making that possible. And young people, I think, are more likely to regularly monitor their financial accounts because they're, again, using technology to help do that. So the data says that they're saving it. It seems like you would agree?
My personal experience fits all of those checkpoints. The first thing I do every morning is I go to my online bank. I check and make sure that all the withdrawals are authentic, made by me. I go to my Google Sheet, which has my budget. I make sure that I'm on track for everything. But again, I might be an outlier. I'm very anal about this.
But the research shows that you're right there. I mean, yes, you're obviously in the top decile, but generationally, you're not alone. I mean, that's, 3/4 of millennials have financial plans, which is more than double what their parents have. That's. Listen, even though I was suspecting that was the truth, when I see that data in front of me, I'm shocked.
And when it comes to spending, I think, you're seeing the day-to-day spending on experiences and, hashtag treat yourself.
Yeah.
But
is that a real hashtag?
It is.
Oh.
We got to get you on Instagram more.
I know.
The big purchases maybe are being made less frequently. Again, you're saving up for that 20% on the house. Hopefully you're buying a car and it's lasting you 10 or more years.
Right.
And so you're not doing quite as much with the large purchases.
Mm-hmm.
At least that's my experience.
I think that matches. That matches what my expectations would be. But then that also leads us to the question of, all right, so where would we invest? Now we know, so if this information is true, again, we're going to take a half a step back. If what we're saying is true, we would not invest in automobiles at the moment because we think that there would likely be less of them if people are Ubering around. There are some futurists, there's a few the few that I really research and listen to. They all say the same kind of thing. We need a lot less parking. We need a lot less cars across the country because there'll be more ride share. Certainly, when driverless cars come in, the cars will be sent out, shipping people around. So all that notwithstanding, it seems like we would also want to invest in financial institutions, but those that are focused in using technology to help millennials plan and save, because clearly that's what they're doing. Although, do you have a written plan? Because with all your envelopes, is that the plan? The plan is the envelopes.
I've mentioned my Google Sheet several times.
I know, but that's the plan.
It's a short-term, month-by-month plan.
Okay.
Long-term, I obviously I have a 401k, so I can see where that money is going. Long-term, I have some goals, but here's one thing that has prevented me from sitting across from a professional such as yourself is, at what point do you need to pay somebody for advice?
Right.
I mean, I'm not breaking the bank by any means, so it seems to me like I'm in the position where I can be doing this on my own for a few years. Eventually financial independence, early retirement, those are some goals, and I don't yet know the exact breakdown of how that's going to happen. But
why do you save to the degree that you save? Is it to retire early? Is that the goal?
Right now, I have shorter term goals. So down payment on a larger home. I have a condo right now. I'd like to get in a standalone house.
Got it.
Down payment. I would like to have a nest egg heading into, a marriage.
Yeah.
I would also, and for children as well, I don't want to be having children without a substantial nest egg.
The fact that you're planning for this is incredible.
And again, travel. I don't want to be doing those things and depriving myself of being able to see the world. And car. In a few years, the Tiguan is only going to be putting along. So if I'm paying cash for something, that's at least a $15,000 expenditure.
For sure.
So I mean, those nest eggs take time to build and accrue, and so you kind of set it and forget it. You say, this is how much I'm going to spend each month. You see it growing, so you definitely feel encouraged. But it's a marathon. It's not a race. So the decision that I make today to not go through the drive-thru and get that $4 coffee is helping all of those individual nest eggs.
Yeah, and so you asked the question. That is, well, so at what point do you if a millennial investor, when do you need a plan? There will be some that need a plan because they don't have the discipline. That's not you. There'll be some that need a plan because without a plan, they can't see really what they're saving for. And until you have like a for some, a visual representation of what my income, expenses, and what the growth looks like over time, it all can feel so far away that you just say, forget it.
You need a why.
Yeah. So those are for some, but for you and for those kind of people like you, I would imagine that it's only at such point, because you don't need help with motivation and you don't need help figuring out where the saving categories are. It will be a point where you say, I am no longer comfortable managing what I have. I feel like I would like to add a level of sophistication to what I'm doing, because what I have works fine, but is there a way to maximize it and make it better? At that point, people like that would be like, yeah, okay, now I need an advisor. So I think there's varying levels. Yeah, I'm sure that's right. Okay, yeah. So I want to look at a few.
You must have listened to the Wiser with Riser Investing for Dummies episode.
Not only did I listen to it, but I starred in it. Co-starred. You were really the star. Did I mention how intimidating it is? Because your media presence is just fantastic. Okay. So let's go through a few categories about millennial spending compared to their parents. So I want to go through a few and talk about where millennials are spending a greater percentage of their income compared to their parents. There's a few categories. Housing, millennials are spending just shy of 35% of their income on housing, where baby boomers are 31%. Again, all these numbers come from the Schwab survey, which was very thorough. Transportation, again, and this includes whether you're, Ubering or lifting or own your own car or leasing your own car. Millennials are spending 17.3% of their income. Baby boomers are spending just shy of 16% of their income. Millennials are spending more on food out, 6.1% versus baby boomers, 5.1%. Of course, millennials are spending more on their education. Duh, who didn't see that coming? In alcoholic beverages, so Lindsay, you got some explaining to do. They're spending 0.9% of their income versus baby boomers, 0.8%. So do any of those jump out at you as shocking, or are you like, yeah, I saw that coming across the board?
I saw all of that coming.
Gosh, that was
it's
too
the
easy.
artisanal cocktail. It's the Instagrammable cocktail. That's
the shareable
why.
Experience?
Yes, that's why you're seeing alcohol going up. Not because everybody's a lush.
Well, yeah, I guess that makes sense though. But then because I've seen it on your social media feed, then I want that too. Oh, yeah. I want that expensive
Instagram
thing too.
is a huge driver, I think, in restaurant success.
Because it's selling an experience. Other millennials want that same experience.
And I have gone to a restaurant the next day after seeing a picture of a food item.
Oh my gosh. I have not.
And it lived up to the picture hype.
Really? Okay, so buy high-end liquor as an investment. So we got to do that. But what do you think about cameras and camera phones and things like that? Because I think it's interesting in that the new generation of cameras that are coming out on phones, there's about to be a little bit of a quantum leap higher, where now that front-facing camera is about the next generation of phone. The front-facing camera is going to be amazing. There's just more resolution. Because I think, if I'm hearing you right, I believe this to be true. That is, people know that those pictures are selling things, and there's just a real incentive to get this out there. And why not have higher resolution, high quality pictures? This is a long-term trend, is it not?
Are you talking about whether people are investing in higher end cameras, or they're just using the camera on their phone?
Do you think they will? Well, no, use the camera on their phone.
I think it's solely phone.
Yeah.
Because there are so many editing apps out there.
Right. I haven't seen someone with like a digital camera in a while.
And it's usually like a 2003 Nikon.
Yeah, I know. Where it's got like a massive lens, a massive giant lens. So we talked about all those education. So I did want to touch on education. Student loan debt nationally hit $1.5 trillion. $1.5 trillion. And again, to focus that on a certain specific kind of generation of people, millennials are absorbing the lion's share of that. And that has to dramatically impact their ability to save, spend, go out, do the things that they would like to do. I'm just curious as to what you have seen and what you believe about student loan debt and millennials' attitudes towards it. Because I assume it'd be generally accepted. Like, that's just part of the deal, or maybe it's not. I'm just curious what you
Which
see.
boggles my mind that you're agreeing to tens of thousands of dollars in debt that will follow you.
Yeah.
And it is just such a lackadaisical thing. Like, it's just what everybody does.
Really?
And so it doesn't affect day-to-day spending that I see. I don't have student loan debt, thank
Right.
goodness. But in the people that do, I don't see it impacting their day-to-day spending, which could be a problem.
Mm-hmm.
It's, to me, such a daunting figure that you think this $15 lunch out isn't going to affect that goal. And I'm not going to pay this off until I'm in my 40s anyway, or I'm going to bank on it being forgiven at one point. So there's still, I don't think they're living any different lifestyle from people who don't have student loan debt.
Which is interesting because they should. You should want to pay it down, but maybe it is that norm where people are more relaxed about it because it is so commonplace.
Well, you want to live the same life that you're seeing everybody else live. It's the FOMO. It's the fear of missing out. You're not going to say no to all of your friends going out on the town because you're thinking, oh, I got to go pay off those student loans. That's not a strong enough why. We were talking earlier that you need a why.
Right.
And paying off your student loans is not a tangible enough goal for people to prevent them from making expenditures elsewhere.
I'm learning. This is because this you really do confirm for me the investment thesis behind a few different things, which I'll wrap up in the wrap up. I mean, it's not, we'll go through it. But there are a few areas where millennials are underspending their parents. So personal insurance, healthcare. Well, healthcare is obvious because millennials should be healthier. So let's not make too much about that. They're spending less on entertainment. Well, this is inclusive of fees and admissions, audio and visual equipment in services, pets, toys, hobbies, playground equipment. Now it starts to make sense. This isn't entertainment in just the pure movies sense. These are like big expenses.
There's one thing in here that's named that I would take issue with. I totally see myself spending less on entertainment because I will be just as happy having a game night at home with my friends, or the eating out is the entertainment, rather than the ticket to a big show where I'm going to have to battle parking.
Okay.
But there, it says club memberships. Does that include gym memberships? Because I see millennials paying a lot of money per month on fancy gym memberships.
The big thing is country clubs, those kind of things. That's the bigger component of it. And you would think that millennials would be less.
But
users.
where would like the Orange Theory Fitness fit in? Would that be considered a country club membership, or would that be in healthcare?
Yeah, well, no, fitness is in kind of its own category.
Okay.
Which is to say that millennials as a percentage compared to their parents spend roughly the same, which is why it didn't hit the radar.
Okay.
But there were a few areas where they spend less. But entertainment jumped out. But now hearing you, it's like, yeah, that makes sense. So for you, concerts, would you say concerts less? Because that's parking and expensive tickets and...
For me personally, a concert is a once a year, maybe a twice a year thing.
Yeah.
It's spending... But I mean, there are other people out there who I know that concerts are their thing. And so they're not saving up for the $300 Rolling Stones ticket. They're going to the $30 show on Saturday night.
Right.
But for me, entertainment is eating out, going out for the cocktails. And I have entertainment as... a category in one of my sinking funds, and it's one of the ones I fund the least.
Wow. I bet you that's common. I mean, common not from the perspective you're probably the only one who thinks it through all the way, or one of the few, top 10% for sure. But it makes me wonder. It makes me think. So let me put together a little investment thesis from what I've learned. I've learned a few things. Housing's an issue. Housing's an issue because millennials are challenged to save the down payment. This we suspected, now we know. So if this is the case, it seems wise to me that we would, I want to say wiser with riser again.
Me too.
I know whenever I hear wise, I feel like I got to say it. Don't forget Wiser with Riser podcast, which we'll cover again. I'm reminded of the European system. In Europe, about 65% of homes are owned by institutions, not individuals, which is not the same as it here is in the United States, because there they have switched over and evolved to a renting culture. It would seem to me that we're evolving that way too, and we should find investment. It's okay to invest in things where you're going to have residential real estate that's income producing. So, would you see, just to make sure I'm clear, are you good with the fact that it seems like millennials will be renting for a long period of time, given all of the challenges and things to save for?
I think renting well into maybe their 30s, but I don't think. I personally don't see renting. Why would I want to spend all of this money on rent when I'm not getting any return on that? I'm just giving my money to somebody else. But I don't know if everybody thinks that way. But I see people renting well into their 30s because it's so expensive.
Right. Yeah, it is. And it's just,
how are you affording rent and you're saving unless you're moving back home with your parents? I just don't know how people do it.
It's hard. And maybe they'll just put off saving till a time where they feel like they'll earn more income later on down the road. Which is, by the way, what a lot of the people who are baby boomers did, which is a big part of the reason why there isn't the savings there. So, again, we've got residential real estate, which is got to be hampered somewhat by millennials. Transportation is evolving and changing. Rideshare is evolving and changing. You would think there'd be less car ownership in the future. We know millennials are paying for experiences, so invest in things that are experiential. You have to spend some time thinking about what the future of the millennial experience is and what they want to do. We talked a little bit about dining out, using your camera phone to share experiences, and then create an incentive to have people follow suit. Vacations, those kinds of things, where I think in my generation, I haven't seen the numbers, but my guess is that people in my generation don't go on vacation all that often, and they spend a lot less as a percentage of their income, I would guess. Certainly compared to millennials. So we've learned a lot. We've learned a lot, and you've confirmed a lot, and you've also, created this understanding where if you're listening to this podcast, hopefully you picked up a bunch of things about these are things that either confirm where you should be investing, how you should be helping educate your kids to be more like Lindsay Reiser. How do you get them to have envelopes in their purse? And how many envelopes are there? How big are the envelopes?
It's embarrassing.
Really?
It's embarrassing to pull them out, but you know what? It works.
I can't wait to see them.
There's 3 or 4.
I can't wait. So everyone, make sure you go to wherever you like to download your podcasts and go to Wiser with Riser. And then you can see Lindsay's picture.
What a plug. I
know. Well, there's been a few. I could do better, but I could go on. I think I'd embarrass you, though. I would. Okay. Thank you so much for coming. Amazing radio voice, TV
Thanks
personality.
Thanks for having me.
Appreciate it. This has been your Manage the Fund podcast. This was everything you need to know about millennials and investing in the future of investing within that generation. Thank you so much. Take care. We look forward to seeing you soon. Material on this program is intended for general information only and should not be taken as specific investment, tax, or legal advice. None of the information contained in this broadcast is intended by the host to be a solicitation for sale of any security. Further information is available by contacting Henry & Horn Wealth Management. Securities offered through Independent Financial Group, member of FINRA SIPC. Advisory services offered through Wealth Management LLC, DBA Henry & Horn Wealth Management, a registered investment advisor. Henry and Horn Wealth Management and IFG are separate and unrelated entities. Henry and Horn Wealth Management are separate entities. Member of FINRA and SIPC.